You need a wife? Her forgotten sister asked, the billionaire CEO said, then marry me. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's emotional story about two women discovering love in the most unexpected way, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story from our channel. It is quick, it is free, and it helps us continue bringing you more heartfelt, dramatic, and unforgettable stories about courage, healing, and love between women. Your support truly means the world to us. And tell me, where are you watching from today? Share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our main character and the moment her life began to change. If I told you the most powerful woman in the room noticed me only after everyone else forgot I was there, would you believe me? I had spent 35 years learning how to disappear politely. In my family, that was easy. My older sister, Madeline Brooks, had always been the person people remembered. She was confident, successful, funny at exactly the right volume, and somehow capable of entering a room as if the room had been waiting for her. I was Hannah Brooks, her younger sister, the woman relatives described as dependable before changing the subject. That evening, Madeline and I were attending a charity gala at a historic Boston hotel, where crystal chandeliers glowed above tables covered in white linen and enough flowers to decorate 3 weddings. Madeline had been invited by a major donor. I had been invited because Madeline had an extra seat. Within 15 minutes, 3 people complimented her dress, 2 remembered meeting her years earlier, and 1 man shook my hand before asking, "And you are Madeline's sister, right?" "Hannah," I said. He was already looking past me. I should have been used to it. Instead, something about that night made every forgotten introduction feel heavier. Maybe it was because I had spent the afternoon fighting to save the literacy program at the community library where I worked. Funding was disappearing, families were waiting for help, and I had smiled through dinner while people casually discussed donations larger than our annual budget. Then I noticed Alexander Caldwell. Everyone called her Alex. At 43, she was the billionaire chief executive officer of Caldwell Hospitality Group, and she carried herself with the calm precision of someone who never needed to ask twice. People approached her constantly. Alex smiled when required, shook hands, remembered names, and somehow looked lonelier with every new person surrounding her. Our paths crossed when the charity auction nearly stalled because several donor packets had been placed at the wrong tables. I knew the event coordinator, so I quietly helped reorganize everything before the auction began. 10 minutes later, Alex appeared beside me. "You fixed that." "The coordinator fixed it. I just helped." "Interesting." "What is?" "You gave someone else credit before I finished thanking you." I looked at her properly then. Her expression was serious, but there was curiosity behind it. "Occupational habit." "And your name?" I almost laughed. "You do not know? Should I?" Across the ballroom, Madeline was surrounded by people. "Most people just call me Madeline's sister." Alex glanced toward her, then back at me. That was not what I asked. Something unexpectedly warm moved through my chest. "Hannah. Hannah Brooks. Alex Caldwell." "I know." That earned the smallest smile. Near midnight, I stepped onto a quiet terrace for air and heard Alex speaking with her attorney several feet away. I did not mean to listen, but one sentence caught me. "The board wants stability, and apparently my personal life has become a business problem." Her attorney lowered his voice. "They want a family-centered public image before the restructuring vote." Alex sighed. "What exactly do they expect me to do, find a wife before Monday?" Her attorney walked back inside when his phone rang. I should have left too. Instead, Alex noticed me standing near the doorway. "You heard that?" "Unfortunately." "How embarrassing." "A little." She laughed softly. Maybe it was the champagne I had barely touched. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe I was simply tired of being careful. "So you need a wife?" I asked. Alex studied me for several seconds. Apparently. Good luck with that. I turned toward the door. Hannah. I looked back. Her expression had changed completely. Then marry me. For once in my life, I was not the forgotten sister. I was the only person in the world Alexander Caldwell was looking at. I spent the next morning trying to convince myself that Alexander Caldwell had been joking. At 10:17, an email from her attorney arrived with an invitation to meet at Caldwell Hospitality headquarters, which was an unusually organized way to continue a joke. By noon, I was sitting across from Alex in a conference room 30 floors above Boston Harbor. She wore a charcoal suit, and the woman who had laughed with me on the terrace had disappeared behind perfect executive composure. "You can still leave," she said. "That is comforting considering we have not started." The corner of her mouth moved. Her attorney explained the situation carefully. Caldwell Hospitality was approaching a restructuring vote, and several influential board members had become obsessed with presenting stability to long-term investors and family-oriented partners. Alex needed to quiet speculation surrounding her personal life. A legal marriage would accomplish that quickly. "How long?" I asked. "1 year," Alex said. Then came the compensation. The number made me stare at the page twice. It was enough to change my life, but the strange thing was that my first thought was not about myself. I thought about the library. The leaking roof above the children's reading room. The literacy tutors whose hours had been cut. The families waiting for places in our evening program. Alex must have mistaken my silence for hesitation. "The amount is negotiable." "I do not want more money." "Then what do you want?" There it was again, that assumption that every question had a price attached. "The library needs funding." Alex leaned back slightly. "How much?" "I am not asking you to write a check." That surprised her. "I want access to your foundation network. Give me meetings with people who fund education programs. Let me present our work. If they believe in it, they can support us. If they do not, I walk away with nothing. You could simply ask me to fund it. Then it would still be your decision, not something I earned." Alex studied me for so long that I became aware of the ticking clock on the wall. "You really do not want my money." "I want a door opened. I can walk through it myself." Something softened in her expression. "Done." Her attorney continued through the agreement. Separate finances. Separate bedrooms. Public appearances when necessary. Either of us could request an end to the arrangement. I would have independent legal counsel paid for without obligation. That detail mattered. Alex was powerful, but she was making an effort not to use that power carelessly. Before signing, I looked at her. "One condition." "Another one?" "Nobody gets to turn me into a prop. Not your board, not the press, and not you." Alex became completely serious. "Agreed." I signed Hannah Brooks in black ink. Alex signed beneath me. 2 names on 1 page, and suddenly my ridiculous joke from the terrace had become legally real. When I left the building, Madeline was waiting at a coffee shop across the street because I had finally told her everything. She stared at the ring on my finger. "You actually did it." "Apparently." "Hannah, this is insane." I expected concern. What hurt was what came next. "Women like Alexander Caldwell do not choose women like us." I looked at her. "Women like us?" Madeline hesitated. "You know what I mean." Unfortunately, I did. She meant women like me. Quiet women. Ordinary women. Women who belonged beside the stage rather than at its center. Before I could answer, Alex stepped through the revolving doors across the street. She saw Madeline first, then found me immediately. She crossed toward us. "Hannah, my driver can take you home." Madeline blinked. "You remembered her name." Alex looked genuinely confused. "Of course I did. For ordinary words." Madeline probably forgot them before dinner. I did not. Because for most of my life, being remembered had felt like something I needed to earn. Alex made it sound like the simplest thing in the world. Moving into Alex Caldwell's Beacon Hill townhouse should have made me feel as if I had accidentally wandered into someone else's life. The place had 4 floors, tall windows, polished hardwood, and a kitchen so immaculate that I was afraid to leave fingerprints on the refrigerator. I arrived with 2 suitcases, 3 boxes of books, and a coffee maker Alex regarded as if I had brought home an injured raccoon. "There is already a coffee machine," she said. "That machine requires an instruction manual. It makes 12 kinds of coffee. Mine has 1 button." Alex studied my coffee maker. "I suppose simplicity has advantages. Write that down. It may be the first time a billionaire has admitted it." She laughed, and I discovered almost immediately that Alex was different at home. At work, she moved according to calendars divided into 15-minute blocks. At home, she sometimes stood in the kitchen staring into the refrigerator as though food had become an unexpected management problem. She had a chef who prepared meals, a driver who waited downstairs every morning, and an assistant who seemed capable of reorganizing Boston if Alex requested it. I still walked the 14 minutes to the library whenever the weather allowed. "The car can take you," Alex reminded me on my 3rd morning. "I have legs. Boston has February. I also have a coat." That evening, I found a new umbrella beside the front door. Alex never mentioned buying it. I never mentioned knowing she had. Our separate lives slowly developed shared edges. I repaired old library books at the dining table while Alex reviewed financial reports across from me. She learned that I hummed when concentrating. I learned that she hated complete silence. She always kept music playing somewhere, usually soft jazz from a speaker in the kitchen. One night, I turned it off without thinking. Alex looked up immediately. "Could you leave that on?" "Of course." I switched it back on. She hesitated before explaining. "My parents traveled constantly when I was growing up. The house was very quiet." That was all she said. It was enough. After that, I made sure there was music playing whenever I arrived home first. Alex noticed, although she never thanked me directly. Instead, my preferred coffee beans began appearing in the pantry. Then came the night Boston disappeared beneath cold spring rain. I stayed late at the library helping a woman prepare for her first job interview in 11 years. When I finally stepped outside, my umbrella turned inside out almost immediately. I laughed and started walking. Halfway down the block, a black sedan pulled alongside me. The rear window lowered. Alex stared at me from inside. "Get in." "Were you following me?" "I was coming home from dinner." "Convenient." "Hannah, you are soaking wet." I climbed inside. Only then did I realize Alex was holding the umbrella she had bought me. "You forgot this." "You brought my umbrella?" Apparently I married someone incapable of checking weather forecasts. I smiled. Apparently I married someone who worries. Alex looked toward the window. That conclusion is unsupported by evidence. When we reached the townhouse, she made tea while I changed into dry clothes. I returned to find 2 mugs waiting on the kitchen island. No staff. No schedule. No performance. Just Alex and me listening to rain against the windows. "How was the interview preparation?" she asked. I had mentioned it once, 2 days earlier. "You remembered." Alex frowned slightly. "You told me it mattered." The words landed somewhere deep. I spent my life remembering what mattered to everyone else. Birthdays. Appointments. Favorite foods. Problems people mentioned once and assumed I would solve. Sitting across from Alex, I realized how unfamiliar it felt when someone returned that attention. Later that week, I came home after 9 and found her asleep on the living room sofa, laptop closed beside her. I quietly placed a blanket over her. Her eyes opened. "What time is it?" 9:20. She sat up. You are late. You noticed? Alex looked at me as if the question itself made no sense. Of course I noticed. I stood there holding the edge of the blanket, suddenly aware that our agreement had rules for money, bedrooms, public appearances, and lawyers. It had no rule for this. No rule for umbrellas left by doors, music kept playing in empty rooms, or someone noticing when you were 20 minutes late. For the first time, I wondered whether the dangerous part of pretending to belong in someone's life was discovering how much you wanted to stay there. 3 weeks after I moved into Alex's townhouse, I learned that being introduced properly could feel more intimate than being complimented. Caldwell Hospitality was hosting a spring reception at a hotel overlooking Boston Harbor, and Alex had asked me to attend as her wife. By then, I understood that her corporate events operated according to an invisible choreography. Investors approached first. Board members followed. Everyone smiled at exactly the right moment. Madeline was there too, looking effortlessly elegant in a navy dress and surrounded by people within minutes of arriving. I watched her from across the ballroom and felt the familiar instinct to make myself smaller. It happened automatically. Madeline entered a conversation, and I stepped back. Someone laughed at her story, and I became the quiet sister beside her. I had been doing it so long that I never realized it was a choice. Hannah. Alex appeared beside me. You disappeared. I am standing right here. Physically, yes. Before I could answer, an older board member approached us with his wife. He greeted Alex, then Madeline, who had joined us moments earlier. Finally, he looked at me. And you must be Madeline's little sister. There it was. The sentence I had heard in 100 different forms. I smiled automatically. Yes, I am. Hannah Brooks, Alex said beside me. Her voice was calm, not confrontational. She manages one of the strongest community literacy programs in Boston, and she is my wife. The board member blinked. Madeline went quiet. So did I. Alex continued discussing the literacy program as though my work belonged naturally in the conversation. She knew our evening tutoring enrollment had doubled. She knew we served adults as well as children. She even remembered that our newest program helped parents improve their reading skills alongside their kids. I had mentioned those details over dinner. I had never realized she was listening so carefully. Later, I found Alex alone near the windows. You did not have to do that. Do what? Give them my resume. I did not give them your resume. She took a sip of sparkling water. I corrected an incomplete introduction. I am Madeline's sister. Yes. Alex looked directly at me. And Madeline is yours. Neither fact explains who either of you are. I did not know why that sentence made my throat tighten. Across the room, Madeline was watching us. When I joined her later, she smiled, but something uncertain lived behind it. She really pays attention to you. Apparently. I have never heard anyone introduce you like that. I looked at my sister. Neither have I. Madeline lowered her eyes. For once, neither of us knew what to say. The strange thing was that I did not feel angry with her. Madeline had never demanded that I disappear. She had simply grown accustomed to shining, while I had grown accustomed to moving out of the light. Maybe both of us had mistaken repetition for destiny. On the drive home, Alex worked through emails until I asked, "How did you know our enrollment doubled?" She looked up from her phone. You told me Tuesday. I talk about the library constantly. Yes, you do. So you remember everything? Not everything. She put her phone away. Only things that matter. I turned toward the window because I did not trust my face. Boston moved past us in reflections of streetlights and wet pavement. When we reached the townhouse, Alex held the door open for me. I stopped before stepping inside. Thank you for tonight. For remembering your job? For remembering me when someone else forgot. Her expression softened. Hannah, I do not think you are difficult to remember. That night, I stood alone in my bedroom staring at the wedding ring we had chosen for an arrangement neither of us was supposed to mistake for love. I had spent years believing that being overlooked meant there was something forgettable about me. Alex was beginning to make me question that. And somehow, questioning it frightened me almost as much as believing it. By the middle of April, our marriage had developed a collection of habits that no lawyer had written into the agreement. Alex started leaving the house 10 minutes later because we drank coffee together every morning. I began keeping jazz playing in the kitchen when she worked late. She stopped offering to send a car whenever it rained and simply kept 2 umbrellas beside the door. Somewhere between those ordinary things, pretending became increasingly difficult. The biggest change came when Alex visited the library without telling me. I was helping a group of children choose books when I looked up and saw one of the wealthiest women in Boston standing beside the circulation desk holding a library card application. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Apparently I need proof of residence." "Alex. I am joining the library. You own more books than this building." "That seems irrelevant." She returned the following Saturday. Then the Saturday after that. At first, people recognized her. Eventually, they simply asked her to move chairs, organize donated books, or help someone use the computers. I watched her kneel beside an elderly woman and patiently explain how to enlarge the text on a screen. There were no cameras. Nobody from Caldwell Hospitality knew she was there. That was when I understood she was no longer coming for appearances. One evening after closing, we walked home carrying takeout from a small Italian restaurant near Beacon Hill. We ate at the kitchen island because Alex had declared the dining room unnecessarily formal for pasta in cardboard containers. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "That depends entirely on whether you plan to ask about my coffee maker again." "I have accepted the coffee maker." "Growth looks good on you." She smiled, then became serious. "What would you do if nobody compared you to Madeline?" My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "That is an unusual question." "You avoid answering unusual questions." "Another occupational habit." Alex waited. She had learned that silence worked better on me than pressure. "I do not know," I finally admitted. "Sometimes I think I have spent so long being the easy sister that I do not know what I would want if nobody needed me to be easy." Alex looked down at her hands. "I understand that more than you think." "Then your turn. What would you do if nobody cared that you were Alexander Caldwell?" She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "I would probably panic." "Why?" "Because I would have no idea why anyone stayed." The answer was so honest that I forgot to breathe for a second. Alex looked toward the dark windows. "People want access, introductions, jobs, investment, influence. Sometimes I wonder whether anyone would choose me if Caldwell meant nothing." "I would still make you carry your own library books." She looked at me. "That is strangely reassuring." "I would also still criticize your coffee machine." "Now you are ruining the moment." I laughed, and she did too. Then the laughter faded, leaving something quieter between us. Our hands rested only inches apart on the counter. Neither of us moved closer. We did not need to. The intimacy was already there, built from remembered details and Saturday mornings and questions neither of us asked anyone else. "Hannah," Alex said softly, "this does not feel like an arrangement anymore." My heart tightened because I had been afraid to say exactly that. "No," I whispered. "It does not." For a moment, I wanted certainty. I wanted her to tell me what came next. Instead, Alex gave me something more difficult and more valuable. She gave me time. The next morning, I found 2 library books beside her coffee. Both were due in 3 weeks. Inside the first was a receipt she had used as a bookmark. On the back, Alex had written 5 words, "I like who I am here." I stood in the kitchen holding that small piece of paper, realizing the most dangerous thing about our marriage was no longer that one of us might fall in love. It was that perhaps both of us already had. 3 days after I found Alex's note inside the library book, a photograph of Madeline appeared beside mine in a Boston business magazine, and one sentence beneath it managed to reopen every wound I thought I had outgrown. The article suggested Alex had originally been interested in my sister and had married me only because I was the quieter, more convenient Brooks. It was completely false. I knew that. Alex knew that. Still, I read the sentence 4 times. Settled for the quieter sister. I was 35 years old, but suddenly I was 17 again, standing beside Madeline while relatives praised her confidence and told me how sweet I was for never demanding attention. Alex called within minutes. Hannah, do not read the article. That advice arrived late. None of it is true. I know. Do you? The question hurt because she sounded worried rather than defensive. I said I know. That evening, Caldwell Hospitality had a scheduled press event connected to the restructuring vote. Alex asked me to stay home. I do not want them turning you into a headline. I already am one. Let me handle this. I should have told her that those words frightened me. Instead, I watched the event from the townhouse. The first questions concerned hotels, expansion, and investors. Then a reporter asked whether Alex had considered Madeline before choosing me. Alex's expression hardened. No relief came too quickly. The reporter continued. Then was your marriage primarily a strategic decision? There was a pause. I knew Alex well enough by then to recognize what happened next. She stopped being the woman who ate takeout with me at the kitchen island. She became the chief executive officer who could close a difficult negotiation without revealing what anything cost her. Our marriage began as a private arrangement that benefited both of us, she said. The details are not relevant to Caldwell Hospitality. The answer was technically true. That was what made it hurt. I turned off the television. On the kitchen counter sat 2 coffee mugs. Beside them were Alex's library books. I picked up the receipt she had written on days earlier. I like who I am here. I wondered whether she liked who I was there too, or whether I had simply been useful until explaining me became inconvenient. Alex came home before 9. Hannah. You told them I was an arrangement. I was trying to stop the questions. You could have said I was your wife. They already know that. That is not the same thing. She went still. Tell me what you needed me to say. I looked at her and felt something inside me finally refuse to become smaller. I needed you not to make me disappear because acknowledging me became complicated. I was protecting you. No. You were controlling the story. Alex opened her mouth, then stopped. She knew I was right. That made leaving both easier and harder. I had already packed 1 suitcase. Not everything. Just enough. Where are you going? My apartment. I kept the lease. Her face changed. Hannah, please do not make a permanent decision tonight. I am not. I am making one decision for myself. I removed my wedding ring and placed it beside the library books. Alex stared at it. The agreement does not require you to leave. This is not about the agreement anymore. Silence filled the kitchen where we had laughed over pasta only days earlier. Alex stepped toward me, then stopped herself. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Months ago, I might have said nothing. I might have made it easy for her. I was tired of being easy. I wanted to know that when the whole world compared me to Madeline, you would still choose me without needing to explain why. Alex's eyes lowered. I picked up my suitcase. At the door, I noticed the 2 umbrellas waiting side by side. I left mine there. Outside, Boston was covered in gentle spring rain. For once, I did not wait for someone to offer me shelter. I stepped into it alone. For the first week after I left, Alex did exactly what I had asked without realizing I had asked for it. She gave me space. No flowers arrived at the library. No car waited outside my apartment. No expensive apology appeared disguised as generosity. She sent one message the morning after I left. I am sorry. I will not pressure you. Then silence. I told myself I was relieved. Instead, I discovered how many ordinary pieces of my day had quietly become connected to her. Coffee tasted different without someone criticizing my ancient machine. Rain reminded me of the umbrella I had deliberately left behind. Every time the library doors opened on Saturday, some foolish part of me expected Alex to walk through them carrying overdue books. She did not. 2 weeks passed before something else changed. I was called into a meeting with the library director and 3 representatives from regional education foundations. They had reviewed our literacy program after the introductions Alex had arranged months earlier. I presented our enrollment numbers, tutoring outcomes, and expansion plan. 90 minutes later, they offered enough independent funding to protect the program for 3 years. I sat in the empty conference room afterward staring at the paperwork, waiting for the familiar thought that someone powerful had rescued me. It never came. Alex had opened the door. I had walked through it. I had earned the yes. That evening, Madeline came to my apartment with takeout. I heard about the funding, she said. I am proud of you. I almost dismissed the compliment automatically. Instead, I said, thank you. Madeline looked surprised. So was I, Hannah, she said after a moment. I owe you an apology. For what? For acting like being your sister explained you. I stared at her. She folded her hands. I got used to you saying you were fine. I never wondered whether you were making yourself smaller so everyone else could stay comfortable. For years, I had imagined that if Madeline ever acknowledged what happened between us, I would feel victorious. I did not. I felt sad for both of us. You never asked me to disappear, I said. No, she replied. But I never asked you to step forward either. The following Saturday, I learned Alex had finally returned to the library. I was upstairs when a coworker mentioned seeing her in the computer room. I stopped outside the doorway. Alex was helping an older man enlarge text on a monitor, exactly as she had months earlier. She wore jeans, a simple sweater, and her library card hung from a lanyard because someone had apparently recruited her as a volunteer. She did not know I was watching. That mattered. Later, after she left, I found out she had returned all 3 overdue books and paid the late fees even though the library had stopped charging them years ago. I laughed for the first time in days. That same afternoon, the director showed me a proposal for expanding our adult literacy work. My name was listed as program lead. Alex's name appeared nowhere. Did Caldwell fund this? I asked. No, the director said. She connected us with 2 foundations and told them to speak directly with you. She said the program should succeed because it is good, not because her name is attached to it. I looked through the glass doors at the street outside. Alex had spent her life believing love meant being useful enough that people stayed. I had spent mine believing love meant asking for so little that nobody had a reason to leave. We had both been wrong. I still was not ready to go home. But for the first time since walking into the rain, I understood something important. Alex was not trying to purchase forgiveness. She was doing the right thing where I might never notice. And perhaps the clearest proof that someone had finally learned to see me was that she was no longer demanding to be seen in return. Alex waited another 12 days before asking to speak with me. Even then, she did not call. She sent a message that said, I will be at the library Thursday to return a book. If you are willing, I would like 10 minutes. If not, I will understand. I read it 3 times before answering with one word. Okay. Thursday evening, the library emptied slowly beneath the warm glow of reading lamps. By 7:30, only the staff remained. I found Alex near the circulation desk holding a mystery novel and looking more nervous than I had ever seen her before a board meeting. You returned that on time, I said. I am improving. Marginally. A small smile passed between us, familiar enough to hurt. We walked into the reading room and sat across from each other at a wooden table where generations of children had probably finished homework. Alex placed her hands flat on the surface. I practiced this conversation several times. That sounds like you. Then I realized every version sounded like a presentation. That also sounds like you. She exhaled. So I am going to say it badly. I waited. I am sorry, Hannah. Not because the interview upset you. I am sorry because when I became afraid, I turned our relationship into something manageable. I called it an arrangement because arrangements cannot reject me, disappoint me, or ask me to admit how much they matter. My chest tightened. Alex continued. You were never the woman I settled for. You were the first person I chose after I stopped asking what everyone expected me to choose. I looked down at my hands. Months earlier, those words might have been enough to send me back to Beacon Hill. Now I understood that love needed more than beautiful sentences. Why did you not say that to the reporter? Because I was a coward in the one moment courage mattered. There was no excuse attached. No explanation about investors or board members. Just responsibility. I cannot forget what happened, I said. I am not asking you to. I do not know if I can trust you the way I did. Alex nodded. I know. And I am not moving back. I know that too. Her voice softened. I am not asking you to come back. I am asking for the chance to become someone whose choices you can trust, even if you never choose me again. For several seconds, the only sound was the old wall clock near the reference desk. I thought about the funding meetings she had arranged without taking credit. I thought about Saturdays when she volunteered without knowing whether I would see her. Most of all, I thought about how she had finally learned to leave space around my decisions instead of filling that space with her own. You still have 3 books checked out, I said. Alex blinked. I returned 1 tonight. Exactly. 3 remain. Is this relevant? I opened my desk drawer, took out a new library card, and slid it across the table. Her name was printed neatly across the front. Alexander Caldwell. Consider this probation. Alex stared at the card. What does probation involve? Returning books on time. Saturday volunteer shifts. Coffee, occasionally. Hope appeared in her face, but she kept her voice careful. Coffee with you? Occasionally. And the marriage? I looked at the wedding ring I had carried in my purse since leaving. We do not decide that tonight. Alex nodded. Then we do not decide it tonight. That answer mattered more than she knew. On Saturday, she arrived 15 minutes early and spent the morning arranging chairs for an adult literacy workshop. She placed every third chair slightly crooked. I finally walked over and straightened one. You are terrible at this. I run an international hotel company. Yet the folding chairs remain undefeated. Alex laughed. I laughed too. Nothing was repaired all at once. Trust did not return because we wanted it to. It returned in inches, 1 cup of coffee, 1 honest conversation, 1 Saturday morning at a time. And for the first time, neither of us was trying to rush toward an ending. We were learning how to begin again. By the time our 1-year agreement reached its final week, Alex had returned every library book on time for 4 straight months, which might have been the clearest evidence of personal growth I had ever witnessed. She still lived in the Beacon Hill townhouse. I still kept my apartment. We had rebuilt everything slowly, without pretending the painful parts had never happened. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became long walks through Boston. Saturday volunteer shifts became something neither of us needed to schedule. Alex stopped asking when I was coming home because she understood that home was no longer a place she could define for me. Then, one evening, Madeline joined us at a library fundraiser. A donor I had never met approached while the 3 of us were talking. He smiled at Madeline first. I recognize you. Then he turned toward me. You must be Madeline Brooks's sister. A year earlier, those words would have made me disappear inside myself. This time I smiled. Yes. And she is mine. Madeline looked at me, surprised, then reached for my hand. There was no competition in the moment. No winner. No forgotten sister. Just two women who had finally stopped living inside roles neither of us had consciously chosen. Across the room, Alex watched me with a quiet smile. Later, after the final guests left, she asked me to stay. We walked between the library shelves until we reached the reading room where she had apologized months earlier. On the table sat our original marriage agreement. It expires tomorrow, Alex said. I know. My attorney asked whether I wanted another agreement. And? I told her no. I looked at Alex. That must have been difficult for you. Extremely. I enjoy paperwork. I laughed. Then she became serious. Hannah, when this started, I thought marriage could solve a business problem. Then I thought loving you meant convincing you to stay. I was wrong both times. She stepped closer but left enough space for me to choose the distance between us. I do not want another contract. I do not want a deadline. I do not want you beside me because a board, a lawyer, or a promise says you should be there. My eyes burned with unexpected tears. What do you want? You. But only if you want me to. I looked around the library that had taught both of us more than either expected. This was where Alex had learned to exist without her last name doing the work for her. It was where I had learned that taking up space did not mean taking it away from someone else. If nobody were watching, Alex asked quietly, "Would you still choose me?" I smiled. That is the only way I want to choose you. I reached into my purse and took out the wedding ring I had stopped wearing months earlier. Alex looked at it but did not touch it. I kept this because I could not decide what it meant. I placed it in her palm. Now I can. What does it mean? The first time, it meant I agreed to stay for 1 year. I held out my hand. This time, it means I am free to leave, and I am choosing to stay. Alex slipped the ring onto my finger with trembling hands. There were no cameras, no reporters, and no board members waiting outside. Just two women standing between shelves of borrowed stories, finally choosing one of their own. The next morning, I moved exactly one box back into the townhouse. Alex stared at it in the hallway. One box? We are taking this slowly. Of course. Also, my coffee maker comes back first. Alex sighed. I knew there would be conditions. I smiled and carried the box toward the kitchen. For most of my life, I thought love belonged to women who were easier to notice. I know better now. Real love does not ask you to become louder than someone else. It does not make you compete for a place in the light. It sees you clearly, makes room for you completely, and gives you the freedom to choose. For the first time in my life, I was nobody's second choice, including my own.